Hey everybody, in this episode, it's just myself and Ben, and we're discussing addict manipulation. Addict manipulation is something that we need to be able to recognize and preferably pinpoint it and handle it appropriately. It's the most viewed YouTube video that we have out, and it came out about 5 years ago. And so we wanted to redo it and cover some of the points. There's 7 different points in here that we're discussing, and we know that in the end, you're going to have a better understanding about addict manipulation. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. What was that, Ben?
I don't know, like I needed to stretch a little, get my fingers separated out. And
Okay. All right.
some spirit fingers there. Is that what it looked like?
Spirit fingers. Yep. You can also go to realrecoverytalk.com. On the front, you're going to see schedule a call. You can schedule a consultation call with us, and we'll see if we can help navigate your situation and point you in the right direction. We could point you towards our Family Reconnect program, which has recently kicked off. We haven't started it yet, but it's out, and we're just waiting for enough people to get involved to sign up for it so we can have actual decent group. And yeah, I think that do at least schedule a consultation call. What's to hurt? It's free. And, we'll talk to you whether you want it from myself, Ben, or Dr. Tambini. I think if you click on the schedule a call, I think those all come to me. But if you go under, I believe, the services tab, you can schedule with one of the 3 of us. As a matter of fact, I need to look into that after we're done recording. For the sake of this, though, just schedule a call on the front, on the homepage. That'll come to me. I'll do your consultation call. And if, you don't want to talk to me, then I'll get Ben involved or Dr. T. But most people want to talk to me. I mean, that's just the way that it is for whatever reason.
They're sliding into my DMs, Tom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They just go straight to the source.
Yeah, they're like, hey, don't tell Tom.
Yeah. Don't tell one take Tommy over there. Tommy, tons of fun.
They're probably scared of you.
Why?
Because you're going to tell them what to do.
I'll tell you how it is.
Yep. Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Okay, so in this episode, basically what Ben and I are doing, we are redoing an episode that we have on YouTube, or I have on YouTube, that is rather old. So if you want to see a younger version of myself, you can go to YouTube and type in Addict Manipulation, and chances are my video will pop up first. And this particular video has over 50,000 views on it, and it got released 5 years ago. And it's the most viewed video that we've ever put out. So now that Ben is with us, which I think you were with us then, but maybe you just weren't camera ready.
Well,
I suppose
that's when I was kind of staying away a little bit and would only come on once in a while because you were still doing them in your closet in your underwear.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so this we actually outsourced to a guy, and he came in and recorded me. But anyways, that particular episode focuses primarily on addict manipulation. So I'm like, Ben, let's redo this and kind of give, now 5 years has passed, and we'll discuss it a little bit, and curious to get some perspective from you. So we broke this down into 7 different points, and we're going to cover each one, and we're not going to cover it in extreme detail. We'll try and keep this under 30 minutes. And in the end, you'll have a better understanding as to how addict manipulation works. So, right, Ben?
That is correct.
All right. So point number 1 is it's rather simple. We see this a lot with addicts, with alcoholics. And Ben, you mentioned this in the Mind Pump episode. And if you haven't seen our episode on Mind Pump, it's episode 2392. go to Mind Pump and just search Mind Pump and look for us, episode 2392, and you can watch it there. But you mentioned something in there, and this coincides with point number 1, which is victims don't stay sober. So point number 1 for us is oftentimes addict manipulation involves playing the victim.
Drives me crazy, but I do understand it because I'll be straight up with you. I did it. For me, as an example, my family did make quote unquote mistakes through the process with helping me. And guess what? Or their attempt to help me. Their motives were always good. They were very good. The issue is that like any family or any human being, they did make mistakes. And as an addict, I was so keen to pick up and be ready to capture those and whip them right back at them and say, hey, I'm doing this because you did this. And it's absolutely classic. At the end of the day, though, I want to let you know the addict has to take accountability for the action that they're going to be taking. And I've talked about this in the past where we are not necessarily responsible for the fact that we are an addict. There's a genetic component. There is environmental components. There's mental health components. We might not be responsible for our mental health situation. Some people are born with depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever the case may be. But regardless of how we got there, we have to take accountability and responsibility for our recovery, whatever that looks like. That is not on you, Tom. That is not on the family member. It's not on the loved ones. It's our responsibility. And when we tell the addict alcoholic, hey, I'm stepping back from this, as long as you're trying to play the victim. And hey, I'll tell you what, own some of your mistakes. I've brought this up in the past when in reference to 9-Step. Have you ever seen Eminem 8 Mile? At the end of when he's Eminem the rapper, when he's in Detroit and he is doing his rap battle, he admits his mistakes, he admits his shortcomings and all that, and basically wins the rap battle by saying, okay, go ahead, tell them something they don't already know about me. Just own the stuff and be like, yeah, okay, so I made some mistakes. Now what? It's on you.
Yeah. Now you're saying that from a parent's perspective.
From a parent's perspective, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I mean, because, you know, you did play a part in some capacity, but, you know, it doesn't mean that you need to assume the responsibility. And it's just a manipulation tactic on their end. If you wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, maybe I wouldn't end up this way.
And it makes for a more reasonable conversation. I'll say this too. It de-escalates as well. And it can be a lot of pride and ego can come into this because let's call it what it is. Active alcoholics and addicts cause a lot of pain, a lot of frustration on the family and loved ones. But if you lead by example and say, hey, I did make mistakes, chances that they are going to mirror back what you're doing increase. It's not a guarantee. And I'm speaking to this because actually my mother did this with me. I was going at her one day with the victim mentality, whether consciously or unconsciously, because I should throw that in there. Addicts do play the victim, both consciously and unconsciously. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. But my mother came to me and said, I do recognize I should have done some things different. And then I'm like, what do I do now? She just pulled away my victim card because she took some responsibility. Oh, when what I was trying to do is keep the confrontation going.
Right. That's a good point. So point number 1, victim, they play the victim, and you got to be keen to that and keep an eye out for it. Point number 2 is going to be blaming, and this kind of plays into point number 1 a little bit. Oftentimes, addicts, alcoholics, they like to place blame on everything else but them, and a lot of times they justify it in their own head. If you wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't have turned out this way. If you wouldn't have moved us across the country, I wouldn't have turned out this way. You know, there could be a ton of different scenarios, but the idea is that they're blaming everybody, everything other than taking a look at themselves. And the thing that I want to touch on with this is parents, loved ones need to be careful of this too, because they can play the same game. You know, oftentimes and we've talked about this, when you go into conversation with an addict, they're obviously manipulating you in whatever capacity. They're addicted to drugs or addicted to alcohol. That's how they've gotten by for so long. You're not addicted to drugs. You're not addicted to alcohol. So you have to have a better understanding as to how to navigate this conversation. And unfortunately, when they're emotionally charged, a lot of times parents and loved ones will play the blame game too. Because of your addiction, Ben, you're causing this within the family. And because you're causing this within the family, we're all stressed out. We're not handling the situation. You almost caused me and your father to get a divorce, so on and so forth. That doesn't make for a productive conversation. Mm-hmm. Now everybody's just pointing the finger at one another and nobody gets help. So just the same as these points, obviously we're focusing on the addict and the alcoholic. They can kind of coincide with both people, even the victim playing.
Yep.
Touch
on the 3 C's too, because technically as a loved one, you cannot be the blame no matter what.
What do you mean by that?
I was saying for you to touch on the 3 C's.
Oh. What, you can't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it.
Once you understand that, as someone trying to help your addict alcoholic loved one, you are way ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to save yourself mental anguish. You're going to save yourself from beating yourself up, which I think that one's actually kind of coming up in a way. So I'll stop elaborating there and save it for our later points.
All right. So point number 3 is going to be priming. And this one's pretty interesting. This could be done and you don't even know that it's happening. It's very, very sneaky. Ben, if I'm having a conversation with you, and I'm the addict, I want to take the focus off of me in whatever way I need to do it. So this could be done in a bunch of different ways. Ben, do you believe what so-and-so did? Let me tell you what so-and-so did at school today. And whatever it is, so-and-so got in trouble and yada, yada, yada. All they're doing is they're taking the focus off of themselves. If you and I are engaging in a conversation, chances are I know why you want to talk to me. If you're my dad, I know why you want to talk to me. I'm going to come up with every scenario in the book to take the focus off of me. It's almost like they're trying to control the situation, and they call it priming, or they want to control the conversation through priming. I want to be in control of this conversation. So I'm going to come up with these talking points that make they're of zero relevance to the conversation, but they could be interesting, to you. Mm-hmm. And they could play some sort of, could play into the conversation. Does that make sense?
I'm following. I'm trying to think of a good example for that. I mean, a lot of the times what we see is them trying to focus on someone who has the same problem, but in their perception, they're worse.
Right.
And you haven't said anything to them. So, wait, Uncle Tom, you're coming at me for my drinking? Have you seen Aunt Sally's? She's your wife. And you don't got a problem with it. Why are you focused on me?
Yeah.
It's so, and we see that, we even see that a lot in the treatment space, where we'll be doing an intervention with a client or, behaviorally intervening in some way because they've been partaking in behaviors that are not acceptable in the treatment, or maybe setting them up for success. And they'll go off on a tangent. Oh, but client Billy over there was doing such and such and such. And we're like, we're talking about you right now. Let's bring it back. So don't deflect.
Yeah.
Or don't allow the deflection to happen.
Which, again, is very hard to do when you're in the moment. Mm-hmm. But, as these conversations take place and you become more cognizant of these conversations, then you know how to navigate them better, which is all the more reason to join the Family Reconnect program, because we can help you navigate these conversations and kind of coach you up on the things to say and, how to handle them. So point number 4, justification. This one is par for the course. We justify our use because of X, Y, and Z. or I like what you said, like in my alcoholism, I was always known for moving the goalpost. As soon as I was as bad as that person, then I'm going to make a change. And then I would become as bad as that person. And then I'd move the goalpost again. And then I'd become as bad. You know what I'm saying? So I'm constantly kicking the can down the road. And it just led me to the point where I was actually the worst. And then I finally had to get some help. So justification can come in many forms. Again, placing blame on somebody could be justifying use. Playing the victim is justifying our use, so it's kind of all these things combined that could really mean justification. Anything that we can say or do to justify our use, whether it's valid justification or not.
I think for me, if I tie this into my own active addiction, the way that I justified a lot of stuff was by focusing on the things that I was still accomplishing. Which, because we'd be lying to ourselves if we said that people in active addiction haven't accomplished things. So just as an example, here I am shooting heroin and meth. However, while I was doing that, I got my personal training certification. Oh, yeah. I'm still moving forward. Don't you see this? Or, hey, I still show up to work. I have a good work ethic. Oh, my boss is upset with me at the bar. I have the highest sales in the restaurant. Is this really a problem?
Right. Yeah, I had the same stuff. I was able to go and work on cars and, do all the things that functional alcoholism allowed me to do. And so I was able to justify it in my head. Or you can even look at people that struggle with heroin or fentanyl and stuff like that, if I wouldn't have fallen off that ladder 15 years ago, I would have never got prescribed the opiates. And, so blaming the latter, and, even with military people, we see this a lot. Military people that, they tend to justify their use by way of, if you've gone through what I've gone through, then you would understand why I use the way that I use. And it's like, I understand. And that one really kind of hurts because especially people that have been in battle and have a lot of trauma and stuff like that. It's hard not to think like, yeah, you're right, but it's still manipulation.
Yeah. And I would just bring up too, like the thing is like, we might not have all gone through the same thing. I'm not a combat veteran. I'm not a veteran, but at the same time, like I've seen some things, I've had trauma. And the other thing is we are aware of cases of people who have gone through those same things and are thriving today. So to say it's not possible, it's just not the truth in any scenario.
So let's pivot now. So that's addict manipulation. You can look for those signs and symptoms, I suppose. Now, what are some proactive things that we can do, when we're in this situation? And the next is, or the next point that we want to bring up is try and recognize if you are assuming blame. Mm-hmm. And this happens a lot with parents and loved ones. They've been gaslit for so long that they actually believe that they're the problem.
I don't even think it necessarily takes gaslighting. We've seen a lot of cases of parents that come in, they sit in front of us, and they say, I should have recognized the signs earlier. I should have seen that the people he was hanging out with were not the right crowd. I shouldn't have forced him so hard into whatever, XYZ. Like, at the end of the day, you could provide an absolutely perfect environment and family system, and people still come out alcoholics and drug addicts. We've seen both ends of the spectrum. Don't assume blame on that. I'm going to go right back to the 3 C's that we talked about earlier.
I had a consultation call last week, and I know she's going to listen to this. Her name's Karen. When I was on this call with her, we were on for probably a good 45 minutes. A good 5 or 10 minutes of that, we talked a lot about her assuming blame. She was really down on herself about the way that she raised her child. And if I wouldn't have been the way that I was raising my child, then maybe my child wouldn't have turned out the way that they are. And I said, Karen, we gotta shift your mindset on this. Like, what's done is done. Now we got to figure out, okay, what is the outcome? What's the outcome that we're looking for? And we got to move forward. And she's joined the Family Reconnect program, and she's somebody that could really benefit from this, because it's like she'll drive herself crazy, and you did your job. You're still a mom, obviously, but you raised your children. We all screw up. I'm raising 3 right now, and I know I'm not doing everything right, but if we can shift our mentality, and she even specifically said, she was like, I hear you guys talk a lot about the 3 C's, and she's like, but I can't help but think that I have some level of responsibility here. And it's like, even if you do have some level of responsibility, does it ultimately change what the outcome needs to be? No, it doesn't. So go ahead and assume some responsibility. That's fine. Now can we be done with that? And now let's move forward.
What you said just ties into everything we said previously, whether it's the victim, the blaming, all of that. Like, even if you could go back and change the past, what does that have to do with what we need to do now as a solution?
And
Nothing.
It even says it in the big book. We will not regret the past, nor will we shut the door on it. What do you think of that, Ben?
Nor wish to shut the door on it.
Why'd you have to do that?
Because you asked me how you did.
I thought I did good.
You got a B. It was
B
a passing
plus.
grade. Yeah, you were 1 word off, I think.
All right. So we will not regret the past,
nor wish to shut
the door on it. What did I say?
Nor will we shut the door on it, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I said wish.
You wish you said wish.
Yeah. But that's exactly the point, even here in her situation. Assume the responsibility. You recognized, you could have done things better, but let's grow from that. We wish not to shut the door on it. We can look at it, but don't dwell on it.
Mm-hmm.
The next point is recognize being manipulated. If you can recognize that you're being manipulated, then at that point you can kind of pivot. And I'm a big proponent of calling it out when you see it. And I've done it, I've said it, I've been there, and I was able to manipulate my dad to no end. And because I was so good at it, and most addicts and alcoholics are good at it, they never get called out on it. Had my dad come to me and said, Tom, like, I don't give a shit about anything that you're saying. Yes, I screwed up. Yes, me and your mom have been separated your whole entire life. Yes, you haven't had a mother figure in your life. Yes, I've dropped you off at daycare and practically abandoned you. Yes, I did all these things, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you're still a raging drunk and you need to get help. Going back to 8 Mile. Recognize when you're being manipulated and call them out on it. Like, it's okay. We're past a point of hurting feelings.
I'm with you there. That was well said, Tom.
That was well said.
Because you used some of your personal experience and got vulnerable there.
I'm on one today.
Good.
Last point is don't be afraid. Don't shy away from these conversations.
Yeah, don't tiptoe.
Grab the bull by the horns, Ben.
Kick him in the teeth, Tom.
That was a little rough.
I thought we were going somewhere. I'm kidding.
Kick him in the teeth. Yikes.
Well, sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah.
And the definition of insanity is the inability to see the truth. Can't tell the truth from the false, and appalling lack of perspective. Right? And
wait, hang on. I thought the definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
I love it when you bring this up because we've gone over this 25 times on the podcast.
Who's right?
not Einstein when it applies to recovery.
Oh, okay. So this is the recovery.
This is the recovery version, because let me tell you something right now. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, according to Einstein, was dealing with specific mathematical and scientific equations. 2 + 2 will never equal 5. In this case, we're dealing with insanity. The inability to see the truth. We can't see the facts. And facts don't care about your feelings, Tom, there, Mr. Addict Alcoholic.
That's right.
Yeah, don't be afraid. You got to address this. Like, you're already living in fear. You're afraid you're going to lose your loved one. Like, you know what I was thinking about when it said don't be afraid? Don't be afraid to hold boundaries, like we always talk about. Don't be afraid to not pay their cell phone bill. Look, at the end of the day, if your loved one is shooting fentanyl, nothing you do can keep them from that next shot being an overdose.
Right.
Take the steps to do what needs to be done. Is it going to be scary? Yeah, but walk through that fear, because what you're doing right now isn't working.
My friend Sean Cano over at Think Media says, punch fear in the face. Punch fear in the face and just get through it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I've talked about this before, but I like recapping this. If you look at the definition of fear, or I shouldn't call it the definition, the way that I was taught to break down fear is to ask yourself 2 questions. What do I have that I'm afraid I'm going to lose? Or what am I not going to get that I want? Fear can be broken down in any scenario with those 2 questions. That's how you get to the root of what the true fear is.
What are the questions again?
What do I have that I'm afraid I'm going to lose?
Okay.
Or what do I want that I'm not going to get?
What do I have that I'm afraid I'm going to lose?
In this case, your loved one, alcoholic, drug addict, they're going to end up in prison, institutions, death, jail institutions, death.
And the other question was?
What am I not going to get that I want? I want them sober.
Right.
I want them to want to go to treatment. Like, so, all right, we've broken those down. Now how do we take the steps to get there? And that's what, when doing interventions, I just got off a phone call. I always love to hit home the point. What is the very next thing we can do? Don't worry about the thing after that. 1 step at a time. Oh, they might not commit to doing 4 months of treatment. Good. Let's get them to commit to 3 days in detox. And at the end of day 3, we'll work on them staying another day in detox. And then when they get to the end of that detox, then we'll work on getting them to commit to the part that's actually going to help them stay sober. 1 little step at a time. It doesn't, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
You know how to eat an elephant, Ben?
1 bite at a time, Tom?
1 bite at a time.
That
was good. I'm glad we did this.
Do people really eat elephant? Or is that just some?
I don't know. Maybe somewhere.
I feel like it would be illegal because they're protected, right?
I don't know. I think their horns are.
Oh, they're tusks.
They're tusks.
I was going to say elephants don't have horns.
Did you see the YouTube video stuff going crazy with the elephant that paints?
That's always been a thing. Is there a new elephant that paints?
What do you mean it's always been a thing? Has it been?
I mean, when I went to the circus when I was a kid, I was like 4, they brought out an elephant with a paintbrush and be on TV all the time.
All right, well, maybe it's not a new thing.
Like Reading Rainbow? Remember Reading Rainbow?
Yeah, The More You Know.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, it had the shooting star, The More You Know.
No, I don't remember that.
I don't know. Anyways, we're deflecting. Anything else, Ben?
Nope. That was fun.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.